Well, hello everyone, and welcome to our webcast on music law in the age of COVID-19. My name is Carolyn Knowles, and I am the Interim Director of Development and Alumni Relations at the University of San Francisco School of Law. Thank you so much to Professor Maria Ontiveros and Josh Binder for joining us today in this conversation. Before we begin, I just wanted to cover a couple of quick things. First of all, this webcast is being recorded and we will automatically be emailing it to all of you after the program. Also, all of our attendees, you're automatically muted, but we really encourage you to participate by using the Q&A feature. After Professor Ontiveros and Josh have had a conversation, they will open it up to questions from all of you, and we encourage you to participate in that way. With that, I would like to introduce our two participants today. Professor Maria Ontiveros has been with USF School of Law for nearly 20 years and focuses her scholarly work on employment law with an emphasis on immigrant workers' rights. She publishes and presents regularly on a variety of related topics. Maria is co-author of Employment Discrimination Law, Cases and Materials on Equality in the Workplace, and she is the author of numerous articles and book chapters. Josh Binder graduated from the law school in 2001 and has a general entertainment practice that concentrates in music law, licensing and entertainment contract negotiation, including film and TV, and the administration of music and related intellectual property rights. Josh began developing his specialization in music while working in the legal department at Sony Music. Josh's transactional practice consists of the representation of numerous individuals and companies in the entertainment field. Excuse me. Josh counsels clients on day-to-day business matters, including contract negotiation, licensing, and other matters. Josh's client base is diverse and includes recording artists, producers, composers, talent for reality TV and film, screenwriters, authors, personal managers, and more. Josh also acts as general counsel for companies involved in the fields of entertainment and intellectual property. Welcome, Professor Ontiveros and Josh Binder. I'll hand it over to you.
Great, thank you for that introduction. It is wonderful to be here in the webinar series that we have going on. And what I would like to do is to just build on that introduction and start with a question for Josh to ask him really, how did you get where you are now? What was your career progression to become the lawyer that you now are?
Well, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me on. I really I'm honored by this. I remember this was pretty much 20 years ago. I was finishing USF, and my goal was to be a music lawyer. I was passionate about music as a child, and that's that was either I was going to be a successful music lawyer or an unsuccessful music lawyer, but I needed to figure out how to get into music. And at the time, there was Napster, which was actually a topic that we debated in our classes, and everyone saw the music business as something that was kind of like a burning house. And everyone that I had spoken to about getting into the music business said, don't go there, go anywhere else. But my desire to go to law school was to be in the music business, and in my mind, I was gonna be a music lawyer. I don't know that I even understood what being a music lawyer entailed. So my goal was to find a way to get into the business in any capacity, whether it was trying to work for a record company or a publishing company or a music firm or whatnot. And I applied everywhere. I tried to get a job any place that would even like talk to me, but it never worked out. And my ultimate choice was to open up a firm by myself out of my West Hollywood apartment. So, I said, all right, I didn't go to law school just to, do X, Y, or Z, or, I was going to take a shot at running my own firm because all of the music firms and all of the record companies were firing lawyers. So I didn't really have too much of another choice. I started my firm 20 years ago, and I ran it by myself in different iterations out of the apartment. Then I moved into an office, which was a big deal. And then I moved that office to Sunset Boulevard 7 years later. And I thought I was moving in the right direction. And then about 11 years into my practice, and I kind of put together some clients, I ultimately moved into a boutique firm. And I stayed at a smaller firm that was a New York, LA firm for about 6 years. And then 2 years ago, I partnered with some friends and colleagues, and we started a firm called Rothenberg, Moore and Binder. And now we have 9 attorneys. We're in Beverly Hills, New York, and we have an attorney in Miami. And we're a boutique music firm, and that's it's been quite a journey to get from law school to actually having a practice to kind of growing that practice. But over the years, my goal was to try and build value and help my clients in whatever capacity I could.
Yeah, so Josh, let me ask you, as you were going through the iterations from your apartment to Hollywood Boulevard, is there a particular turning point that really helped grow you from the person who's hung up their own shingle and has this passion for being in the music business to putting you on the trajectory to where you do have your very well-established firm with a enviable list of clients?
Right. What's the turning point to your question? So, when I started, I needed to figure out how to give value to the people that I represented, because as a young lawyer, nobody really wanted to pay me anything. But there's a certain element of you can't really survive unless you make money. So, my job was I needed to figure out how to bring value to whomever I was going to service. And the earliest people that I could find to service were really like rappers. I kind of felt like I knew the genre at least as well as any young lawyer. And so I met everyone. I went to conferences. I took on clients. I learned in any capacity that I could. My oftentimes I would send out a contract, and then I would get comments back, and then I would read those comments, and I'd say, "Oh, that's really smart. Like, okay, like check. Let's put that in the remember this." And so, I every month, every year, I spent time trying to figure out how to build value and how to give my clients more than they were giving me. I think the turning point might be when, Kendrick Lamar, I've been working with TD and Kendrick Lamar for probably 16 years. And at a moment in time, many years ago, his fame was rising, and the work that I had done with them was, there's a lot of association that people look at when you look at clients. And in the beginning of my career, I got a rapper named DJ Quick, and then I got Too Short, and then there's like every success leads to another success. So my one could say that the turning point, at least for my dad, when I was invited to the White House, that's when he believed I finally was representing somebody that was real. Before then, it was just games.
Oh, well, that's pretty inspiring. And I think that a lot of what we do is to make connections and build on those. And if you do good work, it comes back to you. And I really like the way that you phrase that what you do is trying to add value to your clients. And when we chatted before, it seems like you are somebody who does a lot of that. So I was wondering if you could just tell us a little bit about what you do as a music lawyer, either in general or maybe some examples from a specific day. How is it that what is a music lawyer today?
Right. So there's a lot of things that music lawyers try and accomplish, and there's different types of music lawyers out there. So I'll at least describe what I do and what we do as a music law firm. Typically, when somebody is hiring us, they're hiring us to be the quarterback of their transactional business. And musicians run like a small business. There's obviously the artist, there's the manager, there's the attorney, and then you can add players to that team. There can be an agent that deals with booking of shows. There can be a record company that could be your distributor / record company. There's typically a publishing company, and then there might even be other people that work for the different teams, right? An artist is going to have, let's say, another tour manager, or they might have people that work for them. So you really start to create a small business that can be anywhere from 5 to 20 people to even bigger if it's a massive business. But our job is to be the quarterback of everything that business does throughout the world. And in the music business, there's not typically a center that you just do one deal with one company and it's simple. It's really it's diverse. So if you look at the artist is in the center, you're going to have all of these deals. You're going to have a record deal. You're going to have a publishing deal, endorsements, sponsorships, touring, merchandising, whatever it is, on a worldwide basis. And our job is to make sure that business is structured right and strategized in the right way, and obviously drafted and negotiated in a way that my clients get to decide what they want to do, and I help them get there. So part of it is educating them on some of the options that they might have, or trying to improve deals and trying to make sure that there's more in our pot than in somebody else's, which of course clients want, because everybody wants the better deals and everybody wants more of the income, and everyone, and at the same time, if I have a client that wants to release a bunch of singles instead of an album, I have to have the foresight that I can negotiate deals to give them the creative power to accomplish whatever they want to accomplish. And not every artist is the same. So whereas I have Marshmello, we don't really release a lot of albums, whereas Kendrick Lamar is known for releasing, some of the best albums in the world. And so you look at different clients, and they have different needs, and they have different desires, and they have different business models. And my job is to understand what their model is, or create the model for them, along with their manager and along with them as the guiding force to go in a particular direction, and execute that year in and year out over many years to try and create these timeless brands and timeless businesses that can survive long after we're here.
Well, it sounds really, really exciting. And let me ask you, so what sort of skills do you bring to your daily practice? Do you spend most of your time negotiating? Do you with people for whom you're trying to do deals for your clients? Do you spend a good portion of your time counseling your client, listening to what they need and trying to give them feedback on where they can go? Or how much of your time do you spend drafting contracts or revising contracts? What sort of skills is it that you bring to your practice?
It's definitely unpredictable. Every day comes with a new set of challenges and a new emergency that happens to be that day. But you're hitting on a lot of it. I have to. We're spending a lot. Every morning I wake up and I'm getting calls from managers. I'm getting calls from the people that I need to speak to in order to execute deals. So for instance, I woke up this morning and we just had a Marshmello Juice World record that was released over the weekend. It's the #1 song on Spotify in the United States. It's the #4 song in the world. So there's things that something comes up and I have to deal with either that deal or finishing that deal or fixing things on something that's come up. And at the same time, I'm redoing a couple of deals for other clients, and we've got to get the major deal points agreed to, or I have to sit and have a conversation with the head of business affairs at one of the companies, or I got to get a client on a call to figure out that we have to make certain decisions in order to move the issue forward. Every day is going to be a little bit of what you're saying, which you got to counsel your clients, you got to counsel the managers, you've got to explain to. Our job is to communicate to everyone in a variety of different ways, things that they need to understand and learn in order to find common ground, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, negotiation is only as valuable as your leverage, right? I can't say, well, I want $20 million, and all of a sudden someone's like, wow, what a negotiator he is. You have to be able to value things. You have to understand your position and your client's position, and different clients have different positions. One of the things that I learned when I was growing in the music business is, sometimes I would run into people who were really, really important, and they thought every client that they had was the exact same importance as them. And, at a certain point, you can't, just because I want every deal to be in a certain way, I know at the end of the day, they can't all be there. Or we have to approach things in a different way and go to the client and say, you're not at this level yet. We need to work and create that. We need to build that before we go and do a deal. So I have to be a little bit of a chameleon so that I can get into my client's kind of spirit and soul and desires and see what's driving them, to properly advise them to say, all right, well, if this is your goal, these are the ways that we can move in order to achieve them. And sometimes they may not know what they want. Sometimes, you have to say, well, here's the a la carte menu of the options. We can do A, B, C, D. What is it that you're thinking? And sometimes they say, you decide. And sometimes they say, well, I'm not ready to make a decision right now. But that happens over time, and trust is a massive issue that, there's particular clients of mine that I know what they're gonna say before I ask them the question, because I know how they think. So it only happens over time. It doesn't happen in it's not magic. But the more I deal with people, and the more they understand how I think and I approach to address issues or to solve problems, the more that we either find the commonality of that, and then that becomes the approach of how we build the business.
Right, exactly. And I think that's something that people often overlook when they think about what attorneys do in terms of the relationships you build with the client. I teach alternative dispute resolution, I teach negotiation, and one of the hardest things for students to realize is that it's about preparation. It's about thinking things through before you get into the actual negotiation. It's not just that somehow you are a magical negotiator who can make deals happen like that.
Right.
So, and as you say, you have to be aware of the circumstances. And one huge change that has occurred to all of us, and why we're doing this over Zoom, has been the COVID-19 pandemic. So what I want to do is switch our focus a little bit to talk about how your business has changed in this time of COVID-19. And starting by briefly looking backward as to how it impacted your business, what sort of issues you had to deal with, but then spend most of our time looking forward, because you are such a forward-looking deal maker. I've been impressed by how, instead of looking at this situation and saying, oh my gosh, my clients are all going to go bankrupt, you and your client base were able to say, what can we do? What sort of new opportunities are there that are coming out of this very challenging environment? Right. So, but before we look forward, let's look back a little bit. What were some of the negative impacts of the pandemic on your clients, and how did you use your lawyering skills to address those?
So I normally don't work out of my home, but we've all been forced to no longer be in an office, and my clients, just the same, have stopped all travel. When you stop travel for musicians, where a big chunk of their income is coming from touring, it's like cutting off their arm and their leg. Your touring is a key element to the business of a musician. So, or at least a touring musician. There's different types of clients out there. Some clients don't have a touring business, and that's reasonable too. But with respect to COVID, there was just an immediate shift in if I'm looking at the next 6 months, if I'm looking at the next year, if I'm looking at the next 18 months, and there is no touring income, and now we're still, every day we wake up and we wonder, are things going to come back? This has become a massive problem. So my job as an advisor is to say, all right, we need to figure out new sources of income. And immediately, just in the touring business, all the festivals were canceled. All any client that had a tour that was scheduled or likely to be scheduled was de facto either postponed or canceled. Where we ran into, and maybe we'll talk about this in a little bit, of the issue of force majeure, and a lot of clients had to figure out, how am I going to offset the lack of income from no touring and make up, because again, they all have expenses that they all have teams that they have to support, and they have expenses that they have to continue, and ultimately they have brands that they need to push. So different teams approached it in different ways. I think a lot of my clients had to figure out how to record on their own, or how to record safely without interacting with people that could get them sick. Some did. Some jumped back into it maybe a little too fast. Some, COVID over the past 6 months it's an evolving problem, and it spiked in certain areas, and and it's going to continue to affect us in a variety of ways. The touring business crashed, but the recorded business did not. The recorded business, as I think all of us have seen, streaming is at an all-time high. So the Spotifys and the Apples and even the Netflix and whatnot, those businesses were not really affected in the same way as touring. And every week you have a new set of releases. So, clients needed to adjust their focus to make sure that they were creating new sources of income and finding out, what they can do on a daily basis, because there were no other distractions. I think,
Right.
I think it's a new world.
Right. And before we jump into that, let me ask you one last question about, as all these tours are canceled, as all the festivals are put off, was there one standard way of dealing with a contractual situation for instance, say you had a client who had been set up at a venue or a series of venues for a tour, or was, going to be going to a particular festival. Once it becomes clear that that's not happening because of COVID-19, was there a standard way that the parties approached that? You mentioned force majeure, or was there a standard way to do it? Or did you sort of on a situation by situation basis go through and decide what to do in each situation?
So it's very difficult to make blanket decisions, and especially in the music business, where you have companies like Live Nation, you have companies like AEG that own a massive number of the venues or the festivals on the face of the planet. You may have a contractual case of challenging whether or not there's a termination or a valid termination based on force majeure. So immediately when COVID started, there were many calls that were set up with agents, and we would have discussions of how we should approach force majeure, knowing that, do you want to take a position against Live Nation, or do you want to take a position against Coachella, knowing that you still need to have a relationship with a lot of these companies moving forward. So you have to balance the practical legal rights that you have in your contract, which sometimes you say it is what it is. I need to get either paid, or we're going to enforce it, or we're not going to be able to, because in effect, COVID prevented this particular event from happening because you can't gather, and particular states said shelter in place, and that's as much of an act of God as God Himself. So you can't not think about the consequences of your approach to a contractual to some contractual provisions that may be in your favor or may not. You really have to look at what's going to be the effect when everything opens up. For instance, if I want to get my client back into Staples Center, once COVID ends, which I believe it's going to end, there's only going to be so many dates that you're gonna be able to have the option to get some of these big venues, and you have to really balance. Do I want to be very aggressive against AEG, or are they going to choose somebody else to get Staples Center if I need it? So that becomes a real issue, despite your good drafting that
Right.
we spend a lot of time doing.
Right, exactly. And I know when I teach negotiation, sometimes I break it down into deal-making negotiation and dispute resolution negotiation. And you may approach those two situations differently, but a lot of times, especially in the business context, we do simulations and examples where the best outcome of a dispute resolution is actually to create a new deal. and look
Right.
at, you've got a potential lawsuit, but rather than deciding how much we're each going to get, let's see if we can't transfer into something else.
Right. Right.
And like that's the sort of thing you would be doing as well.
Right. You really learn, I've been doing this for 20 years, and every lawsuit, the more lawsuits, and we're not litigators, but the more you see them, the more you realize that it's not a place that you want your client to be, and you really have to work hard to encourage your clients to avoid them and find common ground, and not give things away for the sake of giving things away. And you have to set the stage that just because somebody comes after you doesn't necessarily mean you're gonna give them what they want, because I get a claim letter on a weekly basis for clients, and if every time I got a claim letter I offered something or I settled something, it continues down that path. But litigation is very challenging, and it takes energy and it takes money, and it's a whole separate business. And the best things I can do for my clients is to really avoid it.
Right. I completely agree. I'm going to shift now and talk a little bit about how you have worked with your clients to create and execute new opportunities over the course of the last 6 months. And I guess two things. One is, I was going to ask you about the general thought process and workflow that you go through to create those opportunities. Although you have already told us a lot about the fact that you know your clients, you listen to them, you figure out what their desires are. You need to create non-touring revenue, and think about other types of options. So I don't know if there's more to add on the global question. It might be more interesting for the audience if maybe we could focus in on a couple of specific examples of new or novel things, untraditional ventures that your clients jumped on in the new environment. And I know Marshmello does a lot of streaming, did quarantine radio, did his Fortnite concert. I don't know if that's an example you want to go with, or if you want to discuss a different one.
Well, I think at first, the most obvious stuff that we looked at as music lawyers and as a firm is what are the deals that exist that we could improve, right? The more typical deals, or we can extend to bring more income. What are the deals that we haven't done, right? Whether they're new distribution deals, new record deals. There's PRO deals with like an ASCAP or a BMI. New publishing deals. So again, new deals, new ventures of existing clients and their existing deals. Or you try and create new businesses. And again, going back to the beginning, our job is to create new businesses. So when it comes to particular producers that we represent, or artists, now's the time. You want to start a record company? Let's sign some artists. You want to start a production company, and we want to sign some producers. So you want to you want to maybe start a publishing company and sign some writers, and build these assets that are not touring based, and can really be an asset that ultimately you can sell. That's an option that we've done with many different clients, and it's been quite busy. For instance, for Marshmello, we spent the last 6 months developing a children's product. It literally just launched like last week.
Wow.
It's called Melodies. It's for children. It doesn't really use his name and likeness, but Melodies, that there's a little suggestion there. And it's really for kids. And We used public domain songs. We launched the first one is the ABCs. It's an animated, project. It lives on YouTube. I think within 3 or 4 days, it got almost 400,000 streams. And again, that's a very it's not simple to accomplish. That doesn't happen overnight. You have to create a plan. You have to execute the plan. There's many episodes that are going to launch, and there's all different legal issues that come into play. Who has the rights to those songs? Do you want to create new songs? Name and likeness, exploitation. How are you going to fund it? Are you going to create a cartoon? Are you going to create merchandise? All these questions that come into play. My partner, when you mentioned quarantine radio, it's not Marshmello, it's Tory Lanez.
Oh.
My partner represents Tory Lanez, and he did this, quarantine radio, which was, it was very entertaining to particular people. It was, if you didn't see it, I don't know. I'm sure there's some YouTube videos, but he got out of a record deal, and he had this radio show, and hundreds of thousands of people would come on and watch, and it just became a moment. I think when people say, what are the biggest moments of COVID, Tory had one of them. So, I know Cardi, she had an Insta story where she interviewed Bernie Sanders, and I think 1 million people got on. And there's no business in that, but you gotta, our job is to create moments and to have these brands touch different things. I didn't come up with the concept at all. That's all her. But you're trying to guide people to figure out new ways to continue to push the envelope and to try new things. I know that during COVID, fast food restaurants, I think have done relatively well. I think liquor has done very well. There's sugars and sweets, and I know that Marshmello's. We have a Marshmello company called Stuff Puffs that we created several years back, and that's doing very well. So you have to adapt to what's happening in the current climate, and try and do things that are novel. Don't if everyone's going here, you try and go here and stand out. So, those are some examples.
Yeah, no, I think that those are great examples, and I've been monitoring the questions in the chat to see what questions people have, and there are a variety of them, and so I think we're going to go ahead and transition to that, if that's okay. Okay. So one of the and we have a whole range of questions, so I just have to kind of go through them a little bit. One question has to do with revenue streams, and how do you determine revenue streams, and to some extent, how are those divided up among the various stakeholders in the artist business? Did that question make sense to you?
Revenue stream. Which question is this?
Oh, so this was. I didn't realize you could quite see them as well. So I'm actually looking at the one from. Hi, Mandy. About what other stakeholders for the artist business do you work with as part of your work? And someone else had earlier asked about where you get various revenue streams when you do things.
So, if I'll try and understand what the question is honing in on. So, if you look at streaming,
Mm-hmm.
The typical ratio of money that's earned from streaming is 80% master income and 20% publishing income. So if you're looking at, you know, the different stakeholders on a stream, if there's $1 million, 80% of it is going to be master related income, which typically goes to a record company and is split based on your record deal. So the money flows from the DSP, it flows to, let's say, Spotify, and Spotify then runs the money to a record company or some sort of distributor, and then your record deal will determine the portion of that money that goes to you and or any third party, right?
Okay.
And those third parties can be, you know, assuming that I represent the artist, it could be a producer, or it could be a, you know, a writer, or someone in that capacity. And then the publishing income, which is solely reserved for the writers, is split amongst however many writers there are, which typically in today's climate, there's a lot of collaboration that's happening. So if you want to be somebody in one or the other, it's more valuable to be on the master side. You know, you're just getting that much more of the income, but the master side is the side that typically has to invest, right? The publishers tend to be more passive. They tend to be more collectors throughout the world of income that is generated by record companies, and their investment in making records and making videos and marketing those videos and those records and promoting them in whatever way they want to. So the concept is that, for right or wrong, that because they're the ones that are risking more money, they in turn get a bigger piece of the pie.
Okay. And if you could maybe, Josh, direct your attention to the first question in the Q&A. It comes from Brett. And it basically asks whether or not there's elements of artists' business models that are standardized by genre or status. You know, you've just gave a very comprehensive but very concise description of the way many of the contracts go with regard to streaming. And so Brett wants to know, are there any tactics or practices for a well-known hip-hop star that could be also used for a lesser-known indie rock band? And what are the key differences or similarities between those clients?
I don't see the question, but I can answer it.
Oh, okay.
Oh wait, maybe that's in Q&A. I'm just
yes, it was in Q&A, the very top one.
Not the Q&A. Here we go. Got it. So the answer is yes. Different genres have different customs, and they have different businesses. And I'll give you some examples. Marshmello doesn't have a record deal. We really release singles with particular record companies, and because his business the foundation of his business is not really tied to having some record company promote him. We've been able to really have a whole different business model and a whole different approach, because he's really a single artist kind of a business. Whenever he releases an album, which he has released 3, he owns 100% of them and doesn't, we don't use any third parties really. And to the extent that we want to use a big record company, which we have in some of our big records, with Happier, we did it with Capitol Records, and with Silence, we with Khalid, we did it with RCA, and we find record companies to do particular things. But for his business, we did not do what everyone else does. Country is dominated by radio is really, really important for country artists. So it's really, country radio tends to be controlled by very few people, and it's hard to break out. Streaming streaming has not treated country in the same way that it's treated hip hop. Hip hop is something that you can find on the streaming websites, and things move much more virally in hip hop. But for country, you really don't have a lot of options to try and launch your own country career as a fully independent artist. I would say that in all of my years, you really need to partner up with a record company that's going to help build your story and build country radio and invest in those few different. There's not that many options when you want to get on country radio, and it's just a very consolidated business. Whereas for hip hop, you can absolutely stay independent and have a record take off virally, and all of a sudden you're in some big bidding war because you have an Arizona Gervais record, and all of a sudden it's got 100 million plays, and you're an independent artist, and the world, hip hop is the #1 genre on streaming on the DSPs. So you have to look at what genre it is and where you can have some success. And then you also have to look at, who are the typical collaborators. And for hip hop, you're probably going to have to make deals with producers and co-writers and look at the big picture and figure out how to navigate in order to get the rights to move the business forward. If you don't have records, ultimately it's the music business. Don't forget, you need songs. As much as you focus on things like brand, like you need to make songs, you need to make deals with people, and you need to get those songs out. And so in different genres have different strategies, and that will continue.
Okay. So another question that came up that I sort of flows from that is, what do you do when you get called by a client, or not by an existing client, but by a new client? So when you were just starting out, would you get calls from recording artists saying, I need an attorney, I need an attorney, but I can't afford one? Or how do you decide who to take? What do you do now when you get calls from artists? Maybe you're so established now that you don't get that sort of call anymore. And this was a question that had come up, I think it was in the chat feature.
So
when you first started, there you go. Go ahead.
Sorry, say it again.
Oh, I just said, when you first started out, did you ever get calls from clients who needed representation but couldn't afford it? What did you do? How does that work now?
My business is really, it's not on an hourly, so there's not much cost to take us on, because we're on a percentage. So and I pretty much always did that as a young lawyer, and that was kind of my way to get in. It was kind of like, you can hire me, it's not going to cost you anything up front, and if I don't deliver anything, you could just fire me. And still to this day, my clients can. I tell lots of young lawyers all the time, and I started this conversation this way, if you're not going to bring more value than you take off the table, you will not sit at the table. So you've got to figure out ways that clients want to keep you around, because you're so tied into their business, and you're so responsive, and you give such great service that they're going to lose more by getting rid of you. And that's the approach that I've had with all of my clients, and all of my big clients are those that have stayed with me because there's a value. We've been building businesses, and the goal is to continue building businesses until I hang it up. I get calls all the time, and luckily nowadays I have to be a little bit more discerning on what the firm can spend its resources on, because again, any particular client that comes in, we could have 3, 4, 5 lawyers on that client at all times, because that's their business requires that. There's that much administration that we're having to do. Nowadays, because the record business has kind of become a little bit less about record companies and more about the artists and their teams, we are the ones that are responsible for all of the strategy and the drafting and the negotiation of every song, which could have 10 different agreements, or could have more. You have samples, you have co-writers, you have producers, you have all of the different pieces of each song, and each song is its own issue. And you got to put together a 20 album song. We just had Gunna's album that came out, and it's a mountain of work to move these projects forward, and it's a lot of administration. So we have to be smart on the types of clients that we take on. But when I was young, I would take on anything that I believed would be great. And this is not great legal advice, but I took on things that I thought musically were ahead of their time, or I identified with musically, which is not a legal concept and not a very smart business decision. It was kind of like the only option I could take. I said, "Oh, this sounds really good. I think this is going to be great. Let's take them on." I probably took on a lot of things that ended up going nowhere. But what else are you going to do?
Yeah, I think that's a perfect answer, actually, because I think almost all attorneys who work on a contingency basis also have to make those sorts of decisions about what cases do we want to take, what are going to be winners, what are going to be losers. But you have to balance that with what do you want to be doing with your life. I think one of the things that we pride ourselves on at USF is training lawyers who are going to be happy in what they do, and to recognize that you have some agency in deciding what clients to take on and which ones not to. And so I think you're an excellent representation of that idea that we have for USF attorneys. So we only have a couple of more minutes left. There's two questions I think that I want to ask you in our remaining time. One, I think it's the last one in Q&A. It's from Tyler, and it's about another moment that we're going through right now, which is concern about anti-Black racism and the Black Lives Matter movement. And Tyler asks, with the current state of Black Lives Matter and the issues affecting Black people, has that changed how you work or communicate with your clients, or any advice you can give on that?
My job as my clients' advisors is to listen and to take their lead on that particular issue. That you can look at that issue on a number of different levels. You can look at it within the music business. You can look at it outside of the music business when you're talking about police reform and I think it's absolutely changed the way people approach some of my clients, and I think people want change. My clients absolutely want change, and we all want change. So I think it's a very sensitive subject that you have to listen and understand and support your clients in all different capacities. It's not going away. It's something that I think we in the music business spent a lot of time on Zoom calls and within the firm and outside of the firm to really look at ways that the industry can change and can improve. There's executives that need to, that companies that need to hire a whole different group of executives and give more opportunity. This issue should continue, and the more that there's attention that we put on it, the more that it'll be in everyone's mind.
All right. Thank you for that. And the last thing that I want to ask you about is there's a whole group of questions from students, either incoming students, current students, people who recently graduated, that basically ask, what should they be doing now? What should they be learning now if they want to go into the type of career you have? Some people have asked, are there good things that they should be learning about negotiation? Some people have asked, you've talked a lot about contracts. Do they need to know also about trademarks and that side of the business? Somebody asked, are there good books you would, since we're all stuck at home, are there any books, publications, reading materials about the industry that you would recommend? So in our last few minutes, I want to sort of have you give advice that you can to our listeners about what they should be doing if they want to go follow your path.
So you should be doing everything. Yeah, you should read books. You should, there's Don Passman's book, Everything You Need to Know About the Music Business is a kind of like the Bible of the music business that everyone reads. You have to learn as many things as possible. Do you have to know trademarks? I took Thomas McCarthy's class when I was at USF, and in the beginning I was trying to file trademarks for my clients, and then I realized that's not what I want to be doing, and I'm not a trademark lawyer. Is it helpful? Sure. Is it key? Probably not. Do you need, are you going to benefit from knowing more about copyright law? Absolutely. Do we, as transactional lawyers, deal with the very nuanced areas of copyright law? Probably more so on the litigation side and less on our side. My recommendation for everyone that's listening that wants to do this is be very cautious of why you're wanting to do this. Understand what's the motivation. And if you're happy being a very unsuccessful music lawyer, you're still, make sure that that's true. Make sure that that's, you're really passionate about the world of being a music lawyer and not just a music fan. But if you're really passionate about being a music lawyer, start to understand how the music business works and start asking yourself questions of how much I really understand, right? So, you ask somebody, well, what are the record companies that Universal owns? What are name for me the record? Then you kind of look up, you're like, I don't know. What are the record companies that Sony owns? Who are the people that run these companies? You start to kind of map out whether or not you're really interested in the business of it, or whether you just like the concept of some artist or working with an artist. So that knowing what you're passionate about and knowing what you like is number one. Once you've established that, you've got to meet people. You've got to meet as many possible people in the business as you can and try and figure out ways to develop relationships with them. I did an internship at Sony Music, and I got one company that said yes. I had 30 companies that said no, and the guy that gave me my opportunity is a guy named Andrew Ross. And for better or for worse, he became my mentor because I just became friends with him. And I made him become my mentor because he didn't really have a choice. I played tennis with him. I talked to him. I took him out for lunch. I took him out for coffee. I'd send him wine. I did whatever I could to make him give me whatever time I wanted. And we're still friends to this day. He's one of my favorite people in this business. And I always tell him, but for him, I would have never had this opportunity. So, luck happens when you do something 1,000 times, and you're going to get more lucky by doing it more and more and more. So you've got to kind of do everything, and doors will open because somebody says, wow, look how much effort and time and interest you've shown. Somebody wants a job and they've done something. It's a lot more than someone says, well, I just want to get into the entertainment business.
Great. Well, thank you. I think that's wonderful advice. And Julie, I don't know if you're popping back on here to wrap things up, but we are about at the top of the hour. And I certainly have appreciated everything that you have provided. And I know that this recording will be available later on.
Yes,
so,
thank you. Thank you so much, Professor Ontiveros. This was really great. And Josh, thank you for giving your time for us to learn more from you. This has been a really fascinating and enjoyable time.
My pleasure.
Very informative. Thank you.
It's great.
And thanks everyone for joining us. As Professor Ontiveros said, this is being recorded, and so we'll email this to you afterwards. And so feel free to watch again, share with others. This has been great. Thanks everyone. Be well.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay,
you.
bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye-bye.